Joining us this evening. I hope everyone's able to tune in and join us to discuss the local strategic planning statement from Wagga City Council. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of lands on which we're meeting, the Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples that are joining us tonight. What is a local strategic planning statement, and why are we trying to get people involved and make them aware of what it's about? Well, it sets the vision for the city and where we see the future growth and the shape of the city for the next 20 years. It is a requirement for New South Wales State Government that every council has a local strategic planning statement, and each one of those is unique in its own character, and that's why we need to get out and make sure that our community appreciates and understands what's being included, but also so that we hear from the community exactly what you're looking for and make sure they marry up. I guess one of the key elements is it's a high-level strategic document. It doesn't go into the nitty-gritty about specific planning controls, but rather it sets out, and in simple terms, it tells the story of how this city's going to grow, where it's going to grow, and what opportunities are going to be provided for. I think that covers it off in pretty simple terms. And look, as we go through tonight, this is an interactive forum, and we do have the opportunity for people to pose questions, and certainly encourage them to send those through. We've got some lovely assistants behind the scenes to help us collate those questions and bring them forward. But what we'd like to do is just give you a general overview, an oversight of what's provided for in the local strategic planning statement, and then we'll go through into some of those questions. So to start off with, what is an LSPS? Or local strategic planning statement?
So the local strategic planning statement, or LSPS, it's a 20-year vision. It looks at how we're going to grow and develop over the next 20 years, not just in the city, but in our rural areas and the villages as well. So we have outlined, what is it that we're seeing in the city and our villages now, how we think that's going to change, and what are we going to do to make it a good place to live for our community. The document does have some actions that we'll look at doing if we adopt this. Things like developing a housing strategy, developing the Northern Growth Area, which will be our main growth area.
The CBD master plan, looking at how we can activate the CBD, but also looking then to make sure that we can protect and encourage those areas that are critical to our future growth, particularly around employment or investment, that they're protected and able to grow and prosper and provide that employment that we need for the city to grow into the future. This document has been, as it stands at the moment, has been endorsed by council to go on exhibition, and we're out on exhibition till around about the 12th of December. And Crystal, you just want to, and sorry, I do apologise, I will introduce Crystal Atkinson, who is our Senior Strategic Planner, and I'm Michael Keys, I'm the Director of Regional Activation, so forgive me for that. We're a bit excited trying to get into what we've got to talk about. But Crystal, if you'd like to give us an overview of the exhibition details.
Yep, so we do have a dedicated web page. It's connect.wagga.nsw.gov. Sorry, no, connect.wagga.nsw.gov.au/LSPS. If you visit the web page, you'll see we've made it really easy for you to make a submission. There is a submission form there. If you're not quite ready to ask us questions yet online, you can ask us questions on that web page. You can have a look at the document and also have a look at the maps, and we have outlined on there when we're holding community information sessions. You do need to register for those, and we'll be holding them at the council meeting room. And you'll also see key dates there for when we're doing another Facebook Live, and you can also just get in touch if you want to talk to us one-on-one about what the plan is, what it means, and raise some concerns.
Yeah, and certainly encourage anybody at any time during this period, and even post that, if you'd like to get in touch with us, you've got some questions, or you just want to understand a little bit more about what this document means, where it'll sit and how it'll operate, please feel free to give us a call at any time. We're here to help. We want to try and help people understand and get involved. One of the key elements around having a strategic plan such as this is that this is the upfront time to prepare and provide the guidance for what comes behind it, and that is around specific planning proposals or rezoning, land use zones and land use or planning controls. This document is going to be the base from which they're guided and developed, and when council gets proposals for new development, new rezoning proposals, then we'll refer back to this guiding document and make sure that they're in alignment. So if there's something in here that you don't agree with, or there's visions that's outlined here and actions, please let us know. Ask the questions, and then we can hopefully make some corrections or take that into account. And there'll be a final report that will be presented to council early in the new year, probably in February 2021.
So one of the questions that I have received offline is, what are we doing for the villages, and that they're forgotten and we're not thinking about them. But in this particular plan, we are recognising the importance of our villages and how they play a role in providing that lifestyle type of housing option for families and people just wanting to, not live in the city and live somewhere where they've got a bit of space. They're not caught up in the hustle and bustle of the city. So we are planning for growth in our villages, most of them, all but two. We have identified in the plan some maps of our villages and where we think that they can grow, having a high level look at what the constraints are in those areas. And as part of that, we're also looking to go out into the villages and talk with them directly. So if you are living in the villages and want to know more about that, we're certainly coming out to your area and we'll be there to talk to you face to face.
So invitations, letterbox drops gone out to all the villages, and then we'll have those sessions out in the next 2 weeks, coming out and talk directly to the local communities out there. But that doesn't mean you can't get in touch with us and speak to us separately. And I guess that probably highlights also one of the key elements around the Wagga local government areas, that we do have a lot of natural constraints and hazards that we need to be aware of and need to plan for. And this strategy tries to acknowledge that as time changes, there are greater risks associated particularly with elements around climate change, with storm events, increasing prevalence of those, but also flooding and bushfires. We've certainly experienced that in the last decade, particularly across the Wagga region, and we need to be very cognizant of that in what we plan for and try to allow for in the future. So particularly the Murrumbidgee and the riverine environment that goes with that, the floodplains that are around that, and how that restricts or guides future development opportunities.
Yeah, and that's a good point. As part of this plan, we've got themes across community, environment and economy, and it's about balancing those. So the environment is important. We do need to make sure that any planning that we do does take that into account, and we're not putting our community at risk and putting houses in those areas where there is a risk of either flood or bushfire. So, it is a balancing of those elements and making sure if we do have a growing population, that we do also have jobs from an economy point of view, and that is a key part of our strategy. And a question that we have been asked is, if we are growing or planning to grow to 100,000 people, how are these people going to have jobs? Are we planning for jobs growth as well?
Absolutely. We've identified and confirmed that we want to be a growing city, and that's outlined very clearly in the vision for this local strategic planning statement, is that this is a growing city, a thriving regional capital. And to do that, we have to have employment. We have to make sure that we've got jobs for the future. And we've got some fantastic opportunities to build on some of the key elements that we've already got, and some of the infrastructure that we have in place, but also the institutions and industries and businesses that are already here and are emerging and will be highly attracted to Wagga as a region. So we've identified in the local strategic planning statement some key locations and precincts. That includes the special activation precinct around Bowman, and that will create, with further state government investment, potentially up to 6,000 jobs in that precinct. And that'll be also located close to our future northern growth area, so we'll have employment close to housing and try and reduce those trips, but also maximise the opportunities for people to live close to their employment and then be able to enjoy the lifestyle outside of that because of that location. As well as that, we've got Charles Sturt University, major education provider and very significant landholder in our community, We want to make sure that that facility can continue to grow and expand and invest in our location. In addition, we've also got defence bases at the RAF base out at the airport and Kapuka in particular. So they're very significant holdings. We want to make sure that any future land use decisions or development doesn't restrict or encroach on those bases, so that there may be cause or consideration of how those uses can continue into the future. In addition, we've also got the health and knowledge precinct around the hospital, so that the private hospital, Calvary, as well as the public hospital, and all of the education institutions that are partners in there, and particularly the consulting specialists that we have a rich abundance of, and how we can maximise those opportunities.
Yeah, it's a good indication that, you know, one of the main benefits of living in Wagga is we don't rely on one employment sector.
No.
We have a really diverse sector. Let's support them, help them grow, and that'll just make us stronger in terms of growing as a city and a local government area. And I guess too, it's important that our employment and the services that we provide in those employment areas doesn't just service Wagga and our population. We're serving that broader regional catchment of around 185,000 people. So we need to protect those, grow them, and plan for those long term. And
certainly the Lsps, which is an abbreviation of the Local Strategic Planning Statement, recognises the value of our role in the region, but also the value of the region to us as a city. And we need to make sure that those opportunities, those partnerships continue, and they're fostered and supported. And that's around employment, housing choice, tourism, events, as well as just that whole community approach across the region.
And one of the things that we're looking to do directly for our community is, within the city itself, you can get everywhere or wherever you need to be within 15 minutes, and that's a good thing for a city our size. We do want to keep that. So as we do grow, we'll be looking to make sure that that growth doesn't push those 15-minute trips. So you can still get everywhere that you want to get within a 15-minute drive, but that doesn't mean we're not planning for things to be accessible if you're walking and riding as well. So we will be looking at our neighbourhoods and how we can plan those so that each neighbourhood has a park, each neighbourhood has access to footpaths that they can walk on to get to where they want to be, and direct access to active travel networks as well.
Yeah, and that's a key asset that we're rolling out at the moment, and will be for the future, is those active travel paths. A connected community right across from home to work to places of play. Essentially what we're trying to do is make sure that people can enjoy those benefits, enjoy the lifestyle opportunities, and reduce any stress or duress that comes with living in a major metropolitan city where you sit in traffic all day. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to travel long or large distances to go to each of those facilities. So one of the beauties of a regional city such as Wagga is those key advantages, and we continue to maximise that. I guess one of the other elements of it is, particularly around the city itself, is that we have a mix of growth on the fringes, as well as trying to plan for future opportunities of infill development. And that will see a mix of medium density, potentially in some eyes higher density living in and close around the CBD. We do want to try and maximise our central core by increasing densities around the CBD. We can increase that activity, the activation of it, the lifestyle that's available, and the offers and opportunities for businesses in those areas. So businesses and services, retail outlets, as well as service industries. We want to try and maximise their opportunity as well, but also make sure that people can live close to where they want to shop, eat, dine, as well as work. And that's where these sort of infill, medium density apartments, or even duplexes and the like, will provide those opportunities around some of our, and we've got some fantastic, wonderful natural spaces that we'll continue to invest in along the riverside, the Lundry Lagoon, and the linkages that go through those.
And another comment that I have heard and seen through social media channels and the newspaper is, you know, if we are growing within the centre, we're not valuing the heritage elements that we have in the city. And And again, through this strategy, what we're planning is to balance that. So there are areas that do have a really good heritage value, and we do want to maintain that and protect that moving forward. But there are areas where there's opportunity to have some renewal and growth that's not going to impact on those heritage areas. We'd still protect those.
And again, it's about balancing that mix. And this document tries to set out and identify that we respect and preserve key, unique character areas and even elements where they're standalone and they are significant. We should be protecting them first and foremost. But we've also got to make sure that we've got opportunity for new and adaptive housing and different lifestyle choices and different community expectations as they change and evolve.
And for the CBD itself, in terms of comments about shops being empty and we need to attract more businesses to the city, by bringing more people to the city to live, you're then increasing people who are likely to come into the CBD, walk past the shops, use the restaurants and cafes, and start to improve that that perception that the shops are vacant and we're not encouraging businesses to come to the CBD.
No.
So why should the community get involved or comment on the local strategic planning statement?
Look, this is the time to get in and have your say, but also become aware of what council sees as its future direction for the city, and make sure that you're a part of that and have an influence on it. One of the things that can be a little bit frustrating both for our community as well as others who make some of these decisions is when we get to an application or get to a specific development proposal on a site, sometimes the decision and the direction's already been made. This is about being upfront and making sure that we give some clear direction to either developers, landowners, but also the neighbours and the broader community about what our expectations are and what we're going to encourage and what we're going to support, as well as what we will be discouraging. And that's trying to remove the conflict further down the line, as well as any dissatisfaction. So if you've got some thoughts, you've got some suggestions, please, now's the time to get involved, understand what's being provided, what's being anticipated, and that can really help people get a better feel for what we're trying to provide, so that they can either have some more trust, but also if they've got concerns, they can then be more specific about those, and we can try and address those.
Yeah, and if you're not sure, if you don't want to read the document, it is a large document. We understand people aren't going to read it page per page. If you have a concern, feel free to give us a call and say, have you covered this in the document? We can direct you to a page. We can say, no, we haven't. And then you can then make an informed submission to the document and say, I've asked the question, it's not included, I'd like you to include it, or I've asked the question, I know you've included it, but I want you to do more. So yeah, feel free to contact us. We don't expect you to read it word for word. We're happy to help and point you in the right direction. So in terms of the submissions, presenting those back to council is what we would do with them. So if you're going to put in some feedback, we will assess those and prepare a response that will go to a council meeting, and they will need to adopt any changes that result out of those.
So we've certainly been trying to bring this plan to the table and put it out on exhibition as soon as we could. But as we get closer to Christmas, we also realised that we wanted to make sure we got an ample time for people to have their say, to understand and appreciate what's in the document. Hence we're out to the 12th of December, and obviously the timeline between then and over Christmas, there'll be a break, and we'll come back and report to council early in the new year, probably at the first meeting at the end of January or the start of February, and make sure that they've had ample time to consider all submissions and provide a response. That will be certainly something that we also make sure is included in the report. So if anybody makes a submission, you'll have a response in there that covers off any of those key points and advises on how it's been considered and what, if any, changes have been made, or alternatively how it's been catered for. There has been a lot of talk about that connectivity, and we did touch on that before.
I have heard people asking, what does it mean when we say that we want to be connected to the world? I think that's an important element for us to touch on tonight.
Yeah, one of the greatest advantages of Wagga is our ability to connect direct to the world. And when we say the world, we mean either through digital connectivity and accessibility. We want to promote a very highly agile digital state so that businesses can work and compete both nationally and internationally. You as residents and community members can have access to all the same rights and privileges as anybody in the metropolitan area. That should be available here in the region, and certainly we're promoting that. But in addition, it's also about making sure our goods and services, particularly our goods from out of this wonderfully rich agricultural region, can be delivered anywhere in a very competitive manner and nature. And that's why we've invested together with the state government and federal government in our intermodal terminal out at Rifle. We'll be able, with the Inland Rail program, we'll be able to deliver goods directly from this region that are manufactured or processed or just grown, and deliver those to markets right across, particularly the eastern seaboard. So we'll have the ports of Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, all readily accessible, and we're able to cover off about 80% of Australia's eastern seaboard population within a day and a half of those goods. So that's connecting our goods and services, being able to access those markets. But then also on top of that, we've got our airport and our highways, particularly those freight routes. But our airport is a critical piece of infrastructure that we need to make sure we can protect and we don't put at risk, that we do restrict growth around there so that the airport can continue to operate in the manner that we would like to see. Hopefully as COVID restrictions ease off and people become more comfortable and more secure in flying, we'll be able to return to the high level of connectivity that we did have, the choice of flights, the number of flights, as well as potential destinations that can continue to be explored, and those connections onwards.
Yeah, and that food bowl idea and connecting, agricultural producers to the world, that is a theme that's coming through this document, that will continue to protect our agricultural industries and help them grow, not just by ensuring we're not developing their land to residential or businesses, but supporting them through the Bowman industrial area in terms of they can manufacture and distribute their goods through that.
And processing those goods here locally, and then being able to deliver them internationally.
Yeah.
There's huge opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. And the northern growth area is getting a lot of attention in the media. We do have some planning proposals out there that are looking to rezone land, and holistically we'll be looking at that as part of this strategy and developing an overarching structure plan for that area.
One of the key elements that we've tried to identify here is where we call it greenfield development, which is basically where you've got open existing rural areas that are going to be converted over to urban residential development. But the key to that is making sure that we can then plan for and provide infrastructure to service that, so that when our communities start to develop in those locations, they have access to all of the wonderful things that you don't really see and then take for granted about water, sewage, stormwater drainage, but then also the parks, the connected pathways, the active travel networks, and whilst we acknowledge that there are market forces that will dictate commercial outlets as well.
Yes.
So making sure that we've got local services in local neighbourhoods, and that those neighbourhoods then have access to the larger and wider region in an easy and very timely manner.
And there is a lot of questions and concerns about not having access to basic shops out there, and developing a structure plan out there and encouraging growth and supporting growth is certainly going to make it viable for someone to come out and invest in that area.
And hopefully it gives a bit of confidence too, that investment in those areas is worthwhile, and can be sustained and supported. We know the demand's there. We know there's residents out there that are screaming out for local shops and local services, and we are actively trying to support that and facilitate that as best we can. But having some certainty and surety around what's happening around those locations, what the future may hold in terms of supporting and sustaining businesses, I think is critically important too.
And it will be balanced with the central business district too, and making sure that that still remains our main central business district, and that anything that goes out in those northern areas really is a local convenience type store, and you know, for the major retail shopping, people would still be coming to the CBD.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we don't have any questions coming through
No
tonight.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean you can't ask them. So definitely head to the website, connect.wagga, and it's the LSPS project. There is an online question and answer tab there that you can ask questions, and we will either answer them publicly or answer them privately. If you ask for it to be answered privately, we can do that. We will be holding another Facebook Live in 2 weeks' time, and we're also available, you know, to call and email directly on this project.
Wonderful. Well, given that we don't have any further questions, we hope you've got something out of tonight. We hope you've been able to gather some further information and work out where your level of interest might be. And we certainly encourage you to be active participants, be part of the future of your city, your community and this region. It's a wonderful place to be, and we certainly look forward to helping you create that community vision and that outcome at the end of the day. Thank you, Crystal.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Lily, in the background, for your wonderful support for tonight, and thank you everyone for joining us.
We'll talk to you again soon.